let's just dive right in. I don't think The Runaways is very good.
You're probably right.
Rock biopics are tough. I get it.
Yes.
There's a formula. There's probably like a lot of pressure to follow a certain formula. I read that director's name,
Floria Sigismondi,
wanted to tell the story as a coming of age story and mainly focus on Sherry Curry, played by Dakota Fanning, and Joan Jett, played by Kristen Stewart. I think if that was her aim, she succeeded. However, I think that this story just, with the exception of them being so young, it just follows all the beats of like your traditional rock movie. And I think where it ends is kind of like it just sort of peters out. So you're kind of left with the movie where it's just like, I like the music, how far is that going to get me? I like the performances, how far is that going to get me? And it's just not very far.
Yeah, the movie is super inert story-wise. I don't even know that it even follows as many of the traditional beats of a rock biopic as others do. You know, you have those sort of boring, kind of straightforward ones. And this one, I think, skips over a couple of them. It doesn't even really have a lot of interior drama to it. I think it's really telling that Floria Sigismondi is a music video director for the most part, because there are a lot of like interesting, striking images, and there's a lot of the sort of the mood and the attitude of musicians and bands and stuff like that is really captured. But in terms of the story, there's not much to it. This was kind of a disappointing rewatch for me. I definitely remember this one being better than it is.
I'm in a similar camp. I think the first third is kind of decent, and then it slowly loses its way because I don't think it really makes up its mind about who these people are, what the Runaways meant. You know, it has a pretty standard addiction plot line for Sherry Curry, but like everybody else is kind of just put out to pasture, including Kristen Stewart as Joan Jett. And I really love the performance, and obviously am of the mind that the only thing hotter than Kristen Stewart is Kristen Stewart dressed as Joan Jett. But it doesn't, you know, it's like, well, she's the heart of the band, and then at the end it's like, here's a bunch of her solo music, and but it doesn't really decide who she is as a person. So it's just kind of an aimless biopic.
I always think of like Wikipedia movies where it's just like, I got as much out of this as I got reading the band's Wikipedia page, basically. And the story kind of feels that way. This doesn't even really, because there's not even enough of the ups and downs of their career, you know what I mean, that to really even make up a full Wikipedia page. I mean, the Runaways have a great story, but this movie doesn't really even, like, some of these movies get so lost in the details and try to fit in too many characters, and they end up kind of sanding everything off, and the movie just is kind of bland. This one like doesn't even really do that. There's not even really that much in terms of the, you know, the back and forth, the new characters coming in. I think Michael Shannon is like doing his best to make the manager character, but you know, something. But then, as you said, like the movie can't really make up its mind about him either.
The Michael Shannon thing bugged me because after about like the third scene where they were practicing in the trailer home, if you start listening to the words that are actually coming out of his mouth, it's just nonsense. And like it's like scene after scene after scene of that. So it's like you forget that what he's saying is just drivel. It's like poor screenwriting for dialogue, because his performance of it is so like boisterous and kind of like show-offy and everything like that. And then once I kind of noticed that, it sort of keyed me into sort of like the kind of flatness or emptiness in a lot of the rest of the movie. And then I thought it was sort of funny at the end of the movie because, you know, obviously like they were focusing on the Sherry Curry Joan Jett relationship mostly, but then, you know, you get those title cards at the end of like what happened to the band, and like two of them, including Lita Ford, it's just like
not even there.
Cares. It's like, I don't know. The most tension and interest I had during the movie was, okay, so this, I didn't remember that Riley Keough was in this because I didn't know Riley Keough when I saw The Runaways.
Right.
And this was her screen debut. But knowing over 12 years the Riley Keough persona, I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop in every scene that she was in, where I'm just like, what sort of madness and sorrow are going to follow? And it was like, when it was just Brett Cullen being like detoxing on a bed, I'm just like, man, they got it off easy with this Riley Keough tornado.
Patrick, did you think, you mentioned the performance, really liking the performance. I was kind of I don't want to say it was one note because she's doing what she's being asked to do, and I think that there's probably a lot on the cutting room floor of her really embodying the character. But do you feel like, I don't know if I feel like she had enough to do.
Oh yeah, no, she doesn't have enough to do because again, the movie doesn't really make up its mind about who Joan Jett is. She's just
Right.
meant to like represent the rocker in the band. And again, it's fun to watch her sort of take that posture and wear the clothes, and you get to hear her sing, and like all that shit is cool. But yeah, she doesn't really have a character to play. Michael Shannon is a collection of eccentricities. Cherie Curry, like I said, has the sort of standard addiction plot line. Everybody else is just sort of a placeholder. You're the drummer, you're Lita Ford. I have to believe that like some of this stuff was left on the cutting room floor, because why does somebody like Scout Taylor Compton agree to play Lita Ford when she has almost zero dialogue, and like, why are we pretending like Lita Ford wasn't a key member of this band? Because we decided just to focus on the Cherie Curry, Joan Jett sort of storyline of it all.
When I see a performance like the one that ends up in the final cut of the Runaways from like Scout Taylor Compton, the only thing I can think of is like, I feel bad that actor had to learn how to play guitar for
she gets
like,
to do a lot of this.
For like what ended up in the movie.
Right.
But she's always going to be my Laurie Strode, so take that, James.
I still maintain, and I said this back when we introed the Runaways a couple weeks ago, that there's that scene where they write Cherry Bomb, just that moment of her strumming, of Kristen Stewart strumming the guitar, that interplay between her and Michael Shannon. I think there's a reason that scene always stuck out in my head, is because I think it suggests a relationship that we never really get to see.
I was disappointed with kind of the lack of an angle in the movie about how cynically this band was put together, because with the exception of like Joan Jett and Lita Ford seemed like she, was a pretty capable musician and everything like that. I guess more specifically with Cherie Curry, it seemed like, they kind of had they wanted Bridget Bardot type plug and play type of thing. And I don't know, like they didn't come together like organically. So it just felt more like, what if O-Town did drugs after a while? And
there's that sequence with all the headlines after they kind of break, and it's like, if those are real headlines, A, that's super fucked up, and B, that's a more interesting story too. Like the not just the reaction, but the Runaways sort of having to butt up against a music scene that isn't ready for them or has one specific viewpoint of them, and they have to sort of work against that. I don't know. It's just, Floria Sigismondi seems to be, based on this movie, kind of a better director than she is a screenwriter. And I think her writing the screenplay alone maybe contributes to the movie's shortcomings.
I like the music enough, but I could listen to a Runaways greatest hits album. I don't need to watch the movie for that. I love Kristen Stewart as a performer. This wasn't one of my favorite performances of hers. As you mentioned, it's probably like, it doesn't give her enough to kind of show off what she could do with it. Because in the edit that they released, for me, it seems too much like the young actor who gets the part as the rock and roller, and then they like go real methody with it. But like, it's, I don't know. It just, it felt kind of predictable, I guess.
And I think it was a good role to take. I think it was a smart idea for her to do this movie. I think this is just one of those times where it just didn't work out.
Did you guys know that Joan Jett was my first crush ever when I was 5 years old? Because my parents rented Light of Day, and they copied it. So like Light of Day would play a lot in my house. It was like that, and like The Secret of My Success, I remember, were on like one videotape. And every time they put on Light of Day, Adam would just sort of linger.
You had good taste as a 5-year-old. You were a smart 5-year-old.
Yeah, it was like that and Elvira. So I had a type. I'm just like, I like girls who are kind of like dark and gothy. So So we will be back with Snow White and the Huntsman.
A movie I've never seen.
I saw it once opening night, and I'm curious to revisit it because I'm much more of a Kristen Stewart guy than I was at the time.
Yeah.
I like it and can't defend it.
Well, you will because you're coming back.
So until next time, hello Patrick, hello Rob. I got a job at Billabong. No.